What's going on, guys? It's Jacob from Topside MMA, and today I'm going over my locks and traps for UFC Fight Night Shanghai Walker versus Zhang. Now, you guys know the deal. We're going to go over every single fight, and I'm going to rank them from my most confident pick all the way at the top with the locks, down to my least confident pick all the way at the bottom with the traps. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. First up, we got Rongzhu versus Hubbard. Now, I'm confident in Rongzhu to get the job done this week. You know, he's going to be the more powerful striker. He's going to have more pop on the hands. And Austin Hubbard is a good fight for Rongzhu because there's nothing to really threaten him with. You know, Austin Hubbard, he's just not that dangerous of a fighter. Yes, he has a couple knockouts, a couple submissions, but he's just really not known for either. He's just a type of guy who's going to pressure his way forward, make it ugly, make it up close with you. But that's not going to be enough to get Rongzhu out of there. Yes, Rongzhu has had some submission problems in the past. Austin Hubbard's just not going to be the guy to exploit that. I think Rongzhu's going to be landing the more powerful shots, and he's getting better and better with his fights. You know, he's looked better and better as time's progressed, and he's one of the standout fighters from his gym. And I think he has just enough to get the job done. I'm not worried about him in any regard from Austin Hubbard. I mean, the worst thing Austin Hubbard's going to do is hold him against the cage. I just don't see a world where he's going to get outstruck technically or get controlled on the ground for the whole time. Rongzhu has good cardio, he has good pace, you know, he has good striking, he has good leg kicks, he has good striking with the hands. He's all around decently well-rounded, you know, all around. But yes, he struggled with the submission game before, but like I said, not too worried about it with Austin Hubbard. So he's a medium confidence pick this week. Now, next up, we got Sumudaerji versus Kevin Borjas. I like Sumudaerji in this fight ever so slightly. You know, this is a low confidence pick just because I'm not super confident in either guy. I would not be surprised if Kevin Borjas was able to pull this win out. But we just know Sumudaerji, he has a wide variety of kicks, and I think it's going to be able to help him in this fight against Kevin Borjas. Kevin Borjas, we've seen him struggle with leg kicks before, and the striking with the range, everything is pointing towards Sumudaerji in terms of all the physical aspects. We've seen him be able to hang in the striking before against decent level competition, where Kevin Borjas, he's kind of had a bit of a recency bias over his last win over Ronaldo Rodriguez, and I just don't really put as much weight on that win as other people do in the striking, because he was constantly getting clipped, or not Kevin Borjas, but he was constantly clipping Ronaldo Rodriguez, and even the striking numbers were pretty close in that fight considering how dominant he was winning. So it just goes to show, like, I don't know how close this fight is going to be. I see this going over. I see this likely going the distance. I don't see either guy necessarily getting knocked out. So if this does go the distance, if it does go to the scorecards, I see it likely going Sumudaerji's way. You know, I'm not super confident. You know, Kevin Borjas is still a good striker. I just think Sumudaerji, he's going to have the crowd advantage. He has the reach. He has the height. Southpaw fighting Orthodox. He'll have the slight edge. And we've seen him be able to hang in striking before at a decent level. So not extremely confident in Sumudaerji this week, but I am slightly leaning him. I know I'm going against the grain a little bit, even though he is the favorite. I know a lot of people are taking the dog in Borjas. I totally get it. I get why people are taking him. I'm just personally leaning Sumudaerji. Next up, we got Long versus Yu. Now, I like Xiao Long. I think he's a bit of a, I don't want to say brawler, but he's tough, he's strong, he's like a little tank, you know what I mean? He's like a mini Pekka of a fighter. I like him. His cardio does start to slow down, but I just don't know if that's going to be a big problem against SuYoung Yu. Yes, SuYoung Yu has good cardio, so it's not like he's going to be ahead in the cardio, because SuYoung Yu definitely will be ahead of him in that regard. It's just, I don't know if SuYoung Yu is going to be able to win this fight on a decision. Now, for SuYoung Yu to be able to do that, it's likely going to have to be him landing takedowns over and over and over again. His striking is not very good. He had very competitive striking with AJ Cunningham. Not the best look. So I think a guy like Xiao Long is going to be able to be the better striker here, and as long as he can keep it from range, he should be landing the better shots with more power in them. And I just think it'll be enough to get the job done here. Now, I do think SuYoung Yu probably will start to take over later on in the fight, but he's not going for like these crazy submissions. I don't think Xiao Long is going to get submitted here. I think if anything, if he was able to win this fight, he would likely win the third round. Maybe he'd have to take the second round. You know, I do think Xiao Long is going to come in here hot. I think he's going to look good. He's going to look his best earlier on in this fight. And I know that he said in the past that he's more of a slower starter. Xiao Long has said that. But I don't know. I mean, he looks when he's fresh and he has full cardio, he's pretty damn good with the takedown defense. He can hold his own. He can stay on the feet. And if he does get taken down, he can get right back up. So I like him early on. You know, I think he's going to be able to win the first round. SuYoung Yu probably will win the third round. It's probably going to come down to that second round. I think Xiao Long probably has enough cardio to get it done. And if it's close, you know, maybe let's say SuYoung Yu does get a takedown or two. I think if they do get to the feet at any point, Xiao Long is going to be landing the more powerful strikes that are going to make the bigger impact. And that should probably weigh the judges over on the scorecards if that second round gets close. So I am leaning Xiao Long, but don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be completely surprised if SuYoung was able to pull out a win. I think if he was to win here, it probably would be due to him just being able to land takedowns the entire fight, control the wrestling, because I think he's going to be a serious step behind in terms of the striking. So I think that's obviously his clear path to win. It's just a matter of if he can get it there or not. I think Xiao can probably withstand the takedowns enough to be able to get it on the scorecards, but I could see it going either way. Next up, we got Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. I know I'm all over Sterling this week. I think he wins this fight. I'm confident in his abilities. Everything that I've seen recently, too, Brian Ortega just has not looked very like himself recently. You know, I saw in a recent interview, he's calling himself Ortega now. I just don't know. He seems depressed out there. He seems like all sad and down. I don't know. Don't like the vibes from him. Yeah, Aljamain Sterling, he looks good. He looks fresh. He looks ready to go. I'm not saying that means everything, just interviews, obviously. But it's just, if you look at these guys' recent fights, you know, I mean, Brian Ortega, he's what, 2-6 in his recent fights? I think, or 2-4 in his last 6, whatever the record is. He just hasn't looked good. You know, I know his last fight against Diego Lopez, he got 30-27, or it's 30-26 on one judge's scorecards. It's just like he hasn't really been showing any big improvements. He's the type of guy that just takes a beating as fights go on, and that really is not a style that's going to be able to keep going the older he gets. And I know he's still staying at this weight class. He wants to move up because he's getting older. This weight cut is really putting a toll on his body, and they're not letting him move up. You know, he said he wanted to, but he just hasn't been able to. Whereas Aljamain Sterling, yes, he's getting a little older too, but he's moving up. I think he's going to look a lot better at this weight class. Yes, he's already fought here before. He fought Movsar Evelev, but he looked very good in that fight. And I think Movsar Evelev would be a tougher challenge in terms of the wrestling and the grappling than a guy like Brian Ortega. Yes, Brian Ortega has great submission abilities, but, you know, Aljamain Sterling's a high-level grappler. He's been competing in grappling lately. You know, he's training with guys like Merab. I know he's not known for just the submissions, but in terms of the grappling and the wrestling combined, you know, I think Aljamain Sterling is doing everything he needs to do to be very competitive in this fight. I don't see T-City submitting Aljamain Sterling. I mean, I think that would be his only chance to win here. I think Aljamain Sterling's going to be a step ahead in the striking. He's going to be a step ahead in the wrestling. Maybe pure BJJ submissions, Ortega might be at the same level or even better. But I mean, I don't think it's going to get there. You know, we've never seen Aljamain Sterling submitted before. Do I think T-City's going to be the first one to do it? At this point, a 2025 T-City, I just don't see that happening. I don't see any world where that happens. Yes, a 5-round fight does give Ortega more opportunities to potentially get a submission. So I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just we've never seen it yet before. Aljamain Sterling has looked great on the ground. He's never been submitted before in his pro career. So it's hard to see any way for Brian Ortega to win this fight. You know, I just think he's going to be a step behind anywhere this fight goes, except for submission grappling, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. That's not going to win him time on the scorecards, or it's not going to win him points on the scorecards. And it's just one of those things, too, where Brian Ortega is the type of guy where he'd be fine laying on his back. You know, he could accept a bottom position. But in the fight against a guy like Aljo, who's just going to use that, he can take the time off. He's not going to have to step on the gas pedal if he's just on top of you, landing on or controlling you with the wrestling. So I don't know. I just don't really see a reality of Brian Ortega winning this other than a fluke round 5 submission if Aljamain Sterling completely death-gassed. Anywhere else this fight goes, Aljamain Sterling should be a step ahead, so he's a very confident pick. I think he gets it done this week. Now, next up, we got Sergei Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Now, I don't know why everyone is picking, or not everyone, but a lot of people are picking Waldo this week. Now, I get it. He's cashed people in the past. But if you look at the level of competition, it's not even close. You know, we've seen Sergei Pavlovich. Yeah, he lost to guys like Tom Aspinall. But he's got big knockouts on his record. You know, before he went on this recent stint, he was on a long list of knockouts. You know, he knocked out big competition like Derek Lewis. Very impressive. And I don't see the same from Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Yeah, he outstruck a grappler in Sergei Spivak. You know, that doesn't really stylistically match up what this fight's going to look like against Pavlovich. And even Pavlovich, you know, recent years, he started to elevate his game. Yes, he went through that bad knockout loss and he looked like shit against Volkov. But Volkov's very good, like we talked about. He should be on a 5-winning streak right now, if he didn't get robbed in his last fight. So that's not a terrible loss to me. And you could tell he was timid. You know, he was a bit shy after being knocked out. Who wouldn't, taking that much damage if you get knocked out before against a guy like Tom Aspinall? I'm not completely mind blown that, hey, I don't want to get knocked out again. And his fight against Rosenstruck after that, we saw he's able to land the takedowns, which kind of shows that his game is evolving and he can take this fight in different places if he wants to. Now, I don't think it's necessarily even going to go there. I think he's just going to be the better striker on the feet. He has a huge reach advantage. He has more power in the punches. Everything in the striking points towards Sergei. I feel like if he didn't have that shitty performance against Volkov, this line would be way wider. You know what I mean? And yes, Waldo is his recent win against Sergei or Spivak is probably tightening this line a little bit too, because a little bit of recency bias on both ends. I just don't think stylistically that you can factor those in the same. You know what I mean? Because one, Waldo doesn't have the same power as Rosenstruck, so it's not like Sergei is going to be worried about that incoming power coming his way. And on the other hand, you know, Sergei Pavlovich, he's not a grappler. You know what I mean? He's not some guy like what's his name? Spivak. You know what I mean? He's not going to be shooting these chain takedowns, going to wrestle you. He's not going to be doing that. Just because I don't think Pavlovich is going to be worried about the power coming back his way, like I said. So I think he's going to feel free to tee off on the feet here. I think he's not going to be scared of anything coming back his direction, because Waldo, he has some decent volume, but he's just not really knocking dudes out cold. So I don't know. I'm all over Pavlovich this weekend. Anything could happen. You know, I have this as a medium confidence pick because somehow Waldo has proven me wrong over and over and over again. So, or maybe not that many times, but Waldo has proven me wrong before in the past, so I don't want to underestimate him again. And there are some people in the space that have been talking about this fight that I follow who I respect their opinions, and they're taking Waldo. I just personally don't agree. I don't think he has enough to get it done, so I'm not putting him quite as a high confidence pick, but he's definitely a strong medium confidence pick for me, for Pavlovich this week. I'm probably going to have a little bit of action on him this week, so just wanted to let y'all know. Now, next up, we got Lonar Kavanagh versus Charles Johnson. Really quick break. If you guys like what you're seeing, if you like the content, if you found some value in this, please consider subscribing. It means a ton, and I really appreciate it. So thank you guys so much. I know I got the pictures flipped around here. I know Johnson's on the right, but his name's first, but I just realized that now. But I'm taking Charles Johnson in this fight. I keep going back and forth with this. I'm ever so slightly leaning Charles Johnson. The reason why I'm leaning Charles Johnson is purely because of the fight against Felipe dos Santos that Lonar was coming off of. He got chinned pretty badly at the very start of that fight, and yes, he was able to recover, and yes, he looked fine, but that cost him the entire round. I mean, obviously, you know, he was able to survive and get it back, but like that cost him the round. Yes, he was able to survive, like I said, but against a guy like Charles Johnson, we've seen what he's able to do when he clips guys. He clipped Josh Van, knocked him out cold with an uppercut in that third round. Super impressive, and it's just when are people going to stop doubting Charles Johnson? He keeps proving himself over and over again. He was on a big streak, and that, yes, he lost to Temirov. That guy popped for steroids, so that win, you got to kind of, I don't want to completely say not to factor it in, because Charles Johnson did come in with such a slow start in that fight. I don't want to say he threw it away, but he could have won it if he went in a little bit more aggressive towards the beginning. But that's just how Charles Johnson fights. You know, that's just how he is. So the way I see this fight going, likely, as all Charles Johnson fights do, is he has a slow start. He usually throws away the first round, but then he ends up ramping it up and looking better and better, and he probably wins the third round, and it comes down to the second round. The thing that worries me with Lonar Kavanagh is, yes, he's going to be the faster, probably more accurate striker. It's not a matter of that. It's just the chin. You know, Charles Johnson's a tall, lengthy guy. I don't think his reach is too much longer than Kavanagh in this fight. Because I was just looking at this, I was surprised it wasn't this big of a difference. Yeah, it's only a 3-inch reach advantage, which, I mean, is noticeable, but it's not insane. So it's not like I'm saying he's just going to be able to pick him apart from range, but it is something to worry about. You know, that's not the type of guy that Lonar Kavanagh has fought in the UFC so far. When he fought Jose Ochoa, you know, he's definitely about the same size. You know, when he fought Felipe dos Santos, similar, same size. And when Lonar was hurt in that fight too against Felipe dos Santos, he was able to kind of like panic wrestle his way back into the fight and keep him alive in that. And if he gets hurt against Charles Johnson, I just don't see him being able to panic wrestle his way back into the fight. You know, Charles Johnson has good scrambling abilities. He's going to have such a big height and reach advantage here. Because what is he? Yeah, another 3 inches in height too. So he's going to be the taller dude. It's going to be harder for Lonar Kavanagh to really get in and dive on this guy's hips. It's just, I don't see him having so much success in the grappling if it gets there, or the wrestling if he needs to like panic wrestle, if you get what I'm saying. Just because Charles Johnson does have good sprawling. You know, yes, he's not really known for his wrestling, obviously, but like he does have good sprawling ability. He can defensively wrestle when need be, and especially if Lonar Kavanagh is rocked, he's not going to have a fully stationed base to really be able to take off something crazy with, like, have a lot of power to build off of a big takedown. So I'm just worried about Lonar in this spot. The other thing, too, kind of pushing me towards Charles Johnson in this is the big line difference. Now, Lonar Kavanagh is a minus 200. Charles Johnson is just not the type of guy you want to bet against when he's a big dog like this. Charles Johnson is the type of dude to fumble as a favorite and fumble as a favorite and cash you as an underdog. That's just, I don't know, Charles Johnson, his style, it's hard to predict Charles Johnson fights. 'Cause, like, at the same time, you know what he's going to do, but at the same time, it just always finds a way to kind of catch you off guard, like the Josh Van fight. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming. So if Leonard Kavanagh had not been chinned in that Felipe Dos Santos fight, I probably would pick him in this fight. It's honestly, that is the main thing that's doing it for me. Because yes, Charles Johnson kind of did sell against Temirov too, and because they're a similar build, but he still looked good later on, and he still was able to make that fight relatively competitive, 29-28. So I think against Leonard, he should be able to have good success. I could see this being a 29-28 either way, either guy winning. That's why I have it as a low confidence pick, because I really think this could go either way. But enough ranting on this one. I'm taking Charles Johnson for now, but ever so slightly, I could see either guy winning. Ooh. Now, next up, we got a high confidence pick. We got Johnny Walker versus Mingyang Zhang. Now, I'm taking Mingyang Zhang. He's probably going to win by knockout. We're going to talk more about this one at the very end. So we're going to come back to this one, but it plays a part in the later video. So we're going to wait to talk about this one until the very end. Now, next up, we got Yizha versus Westin Wilson. He's a high confidence pick for me this weekend, just because it's not necessarily that Yizha, I'm super confident in him. It's just more so fading Westin Wilson. This line is completely blown out of proportion. But it's just hard to see. Westin Wilson just can't absorb damage that well. When he gets hit, he really feels it. He starts to wobble. Yes, I know he's been training with Wonder Boy in the striking. I just don't know how well it's going to hang here. You know, if he gets clipped at any point, I could see him going out. Westin Wilson is a kill or be killed guy, and I just don't see him killing Yizha. You know what I mean? Like, he's been submitted, I think, one time as a pro, so it's possible. You know, it's possible. He's definitely not a lock. He's not as a big favorite as the lines really suggest in this, but at the same time, it's just hard to see Westin Wilson putting him out via submission. I don't know. I feel like more than likely Yizha is probably going to get a highlight reel knockout. This fight was made for a reason. You got to take Yizha this week, but the line is so damn shot. You can't. Westin Wilson is not great, but at the same time, I'll say one more point. His losses, you got to really look at those losses as like, okay, those aren't bad losses. Brito Anderson and Gene Silva, like, you can't hold those too badly against him. It's more so just his lack of durability. He doesn't go to a decision ever because he's kill or be killed, and Yizha is durable enough to where I don't think he's going to be the one to go out. I think Westin Wilson's likely going to be put under. So that does it for this one. Next up, we got Nueraji versus Crosbie. Got to go with Nueraji just because Crosbie has a gaping hole in his game, being his ground game. The reason why I have this as a medium confidence pick is, I mean, for multiple reasons, but it's just we haven't really seen Nueraji grapple all that much. He only has one win by submission, so it's like not like he's some killer BJJ specialist, and I just don't know if that one submission win is enough to really convince people that, okay, he's just going to go in there and be able to submit Crosbie like it's nothing, you know? Yes, Kiefer Crosbie is not... He's not well-rounded at all. His ground game is absolutely terrible. I get why people are on Nueraji this week because they're saying, all right, well, he doesn't need to have great BJJ. It just has to be enough to get a guy like Kiefer Crosbie out of there. I totally get it. But realistically, I think this fight is probably going to take place on the feet because, you know, Nueraji likes to stand. He likes to knock dudes out. Kiefer Crosbie has a decent chin, too. You know, he can take a beating. He can take some shots. So if they keep this fight on the feet, I think it's going to look a lot closer than these odds suggest. I think the line, if this was a boxing match, this would be a hell of a lot closer in line. But when you look at it, yes, I get Kiefer Crosbie was brought here for a reason. He was originally supposed to fight Song Kenan. So even then, it was kind of like a setup match. And this feels like it's similar. But the last thing I'll say, too, is Nueraji is 24 years old. He's making his UFC debut, and it's on short notice. We've seen so many UFC prospects look great. Undefeated ones, too. This guy's not even undefeated. Undefeated prospects shit the bed in their UFC debut. Big card in his hometown, a lot of lights. There's going to be a lot of pressure on this young kid. Minus 500 or whatever he's at, or reaching, you know, because the line's moving. I don't know. I mean, he's more well-rounded. This is an MMA fight, so I have him as a medium confidence pick, but I'm just saying don't throw every single parlay with Nueraji in it because anything could happen, you know, especially if this takes place on the feet. But next up, we got Maheshate versus Zhang. This is honestly a coin toss for me. I know we didn't really talk about this in the last video. There's just not a whole lot to go off of. It's like Maheshate, he hasn't looked good in some recent fights, but then you look back and it's like, oh, well, he knocked out Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia is my dog. So it's like, and he's super good. You know the streak that he's on now. So maybe that was a fluke. I don't know. It's just like that. If it wasn't for that Steve Garcia fight, I would be definitely picking Zhang here. It's just that little fight in the back of my mind. I know it was a while ago, but it's a factor to consider in this one. And I don't think Zhang is going to get chinned or anything like that, but it just, I don't know. This is one I know I talked about in the last video too, but it's like, this feels like a coin toss of a fight to me. It's so close. You could go either way. I get why everyone, or not everyone, but I get why whoever's on Zhang, I get why you guys are on Zhang. I get why people might be on Maheshate. Very, very close fight. I think the pick-em odds are perfectly accurate. If there's any type of robbery in a decision, it's probably going to go for the Chinese man, just because the crowd's probably going to be going crazy for him. They're probably going to be screaming every time he lands a shot. Zhang is not super dangerous. You know, he's durable, but he's not super dangerous. I don't know. I could see this one easily going long. I could see this easily being a split decision. And if it is a split decision, you got to assume Maheshate is probably going to get it. That's honestly the main reason I'm picking him this week, because I think this is a coin toss. But that's all I got for this one. I can't say I have a ton more. But next up, we got Satybaldiev versus Diyar Nurgozhay. I can move myself over a little bit. Now, this one I have as a low confidence pick, as at one of the lowest confidence picks too, just because there's a bit of uncertainty with these guys. They both only had one UFC fight, and they both, there were weird situations for both of their fights. Now, Satybaldiev, he fought up a weight class on short notice from light heavyweight to heavyweight, and he had to fight Martin Buday, who is the biggest, fattest, most pressure heavy. He's going to control you against the fence type of heavyweight there is. That's the only thing he's going to do in his fights. And he had to take that on short notice, and Satybaldiev was probably down 60 pounds. You know, he probably weighed 60 pounds less than Martin Buday in that fight. So you got to consider, like, all right, that's not how a normal fight like that he's going to have is going to go. You know, it's like, what's his record now? 9-1, I think, or 8-1 right now. So it's like, before that fight, he's looked pretty good. You know, he's a striker. He has some good power. He has pretty quick hands. You know, I think he's all around decent. You know, he's able to even win some moments against Buday in the control against the cage at times early on. It's just he started to fade later the fight went on. But you can't blame him, you know, for a light heavyweight moving up to heavyweight on, like, it was like 2 or 3 days notice that he had for that fight too. So for his cardio at this high of a weight class to last that good on short notice was pretty impressive to me. And actually I thought it was impressive. So I'm picking him this week. But when you look at Nurgozhay, I know a lot of people are completely writing him off because of his last performance. But something about his last performance was just so weird, and like, everything about it, just, he seemed so off. I almost think he had like an illness or something. Like, something seemed so wrong to the point where it's like, dude, are you like, you have COVID, or like you have some like chronic illness or something? I don't know. It just seems so weird. I'm not going to completely write off Nurgozhay just yet off of one bad performance, because it was the whole time. It was like, even, yes, he weighed overweight. He was 4 pounds over. He couldn't make the weight. And it's like, he's a chubby dude. So it's like, not like he was dying, skin and bones, he couldn't take any more weight off, but it's just like, he looked like shit. And even when he was coming into the fight too, when he was doing his walk-in, he just had this like zombie dead look to him. He just looked like he was ill. He looked like a sick person. And then he went out there and looked like shit. He got pieced up on the feet. He got dropped in round 1. That's the thing that kind of I don't know, that yes, he looked like he almost was sick, but then at the same time, he got pieced up on the feet and he got dropped in the first round. So I'm like, all right, maybe his chin's not great. You know, it's like Satybaldiev, he has some power. He hurt Martin Buday early on in that fight. So I'm like, maybe like that's a concern. And then the second round went by in that fight too. And then Nurgozhay, he went for the grappling, and then turns out he gets submitted by Brenson Ribeiro. So I'm like, we've seen him get not exposed, but we've seen him look bad in the striking, and we've seen him look bad in the grappling at the UFC level. Maybe it was an illness, though. It's like, I just still haven't been able to figure out, was there anything wrong with him? I don't know. So, off their recent performances, you got to pick Satybaldiev, but I just wouldn't look too far into this. You know, it's kind of like I can't think too far into, or think too much about this one. You know, you can't overanalyze just one fight for each guy at a high level. So, can't really say a whole lot more about this one. The pick is Satybaldiev, but I could see either guy winning this. And I could see Nurgozhay looking a lot better than he did in his last fight. If he comes out here and puts on a masterclass, I would not be surprised. If he goes out here and gets chinned in the first round and gets knocked out, would not be surprised either. Could go either way. But finally, we got Michel Pereira versus Daukaus. Now, I like Pereira in this one. Just Daukaus has never been able to really prove that he can hang at the UFC level. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he had his little stint earlier where he fought a couple guys and the competition was not bad. You know, it's like, yes, he got finished in his losses, but it was like against guys like Roman Dolidze, who that's a good quality win. So I can't really hold that against him all that much. But at the same time, it's just like, if you're winning 3 fights in the local scene. I think it was like Cage Warriors or whatever it was, just to come back against a guy like Michel Pereira. That's not good. It's just, we know Daukaus has had these issues with his durability. It's like when we saw him lose, it was all by finish. And it was, or I think the majority of them were by finish. And it was just like, he never really looked great at any given point. And it's like, yeah, he's a submission. I don't want to say he's a submission one-trick pony, but it's like, if he's getting the finish, he's likely going to get the submission. So I was trying to look this up. I was like, look, Kyle Daukaus, how many wins by knockout did this dude have? Because I know he has 11 by sub. Yeah, he only has 1 win by knockout. So I'm like, all right, if he's going to get finished, or if someone's going to get finished, Michel Pereira is dangerous, man. He's very dangerous. He can get you on the ground by a knockout. He could submit you. Do I think he submits Kyle Daukaus? Maybe not. I just think he's likely going to get knocked out here. Michel Pereira, when he is on, he is on. And when he is popping, he's letting shit go. He is dangerous. His last performance was so bad. Don't even get me started on this. We talked about that in the last video. It was abysmally bad. It was embarrassing. I don't know what mafia paid him off, but he got a fat check from that fight. It was so bad. That's like one of the fights where you bring your boys over and you tell them like, oh, like I think this guy's going to win. And it just, you look like a complete idiot. That was one of those fights. It's like, I swear, I told my friends, I was like, this guy normally doesn't fight like this. I don't know what happened here, but anyway, I think you can't have the recency bias because overall, Michel Pereira, when he's activated, he's ready to go. And that was a one-off. Now, if he screws us again this week, Michel Pereira is going to be on the ban list. But give him a one-off pass. One time, you can't just completely write someone off entirely because it wasn't like he looked like shit in the sense of like he was getting chinned and like was looking really bad on the ground. It was just like he wasn't even trying. It was like I mean, you could say that's arguably even worse, but he just wasn't trying in that fight. But it wasn't like a skill issue. It was just purely just like an effort, heart. Who knows what the hell was going on with him? I don't know. But he's the better fighter. He's the better fighter in every regard. He should be more dangerous. He should be more powerful. I just don't see a way for Daukaus to win this fight other than a fluke late submission. But it's only 3 rounds. Michel Pereira, yes, he's had cardio issues in the past. But a 3-rounder, Kyle Daukaus is stepping up on shorter notice. And I think he was training for a different fight, but he's still like changing opponent short notice. It still has an impact on you. So the pick's got to be Michel Pereira. You know what I mean? If this was before the Abbas fight, this line would be way wider. It's just that recency bias of, this dude just shit the bed. It's making this line a lot tighter. I think it could be a little bit wider, but that's my 2 cents on this one. Now, I know, didn't have a lock or trap for this one, but hold on. Now, personally, this is how I would rank this card. This is how I would rank it. I don't necessarily think there are locks or huge traps for this, but I know you guys want to see at least one of each. So if I had to pick a lock and trap for the card, first up, we would do the lock. I would have to go Aljamain Sterling versus Brian Ortega. If I had to pick one lock, that's what it would be. Now, this is just because of everything we said. We already talked about this one. I know we're going to talk about a different one here, but we already talked about this one. But it's just the only way Brian Ortega is likely going to win this fight would be a late Hail Mary submission. Everything we talked about before, I just don't see a way for him to flying anvil Homer Simpson his way to a win here. It's like, yes, he's dangerous on the ground, but Aljamain Sterling is a very high level grappler. That's other than that, that's really his only chance. He's going to be behind in everything else. You know what I mean? And I think, yes, he has more opportunities in a 5-round fight, but at the same time, he's not going to be able to go for some crazy submission. Like, let's say he has an opportunity for something in the second round, and he really goes for it, and he maybe is just squeezing on the neck, maybe going for a guillotine or something, and he's just holding on to the submission. If he death gasses, and I know he has decent cardio, but if he's not going to be as willing to really push the pace and go for something early on. He's going to be a lot more reserved. And he even said, he's like, I want to go to war. He wants to stand and strike. He said he wants to make this a battle. Aljamain Sterling is just not that guy. He's going to do whatever's smartest to make it more beneficial for him. I think he's going to be better on the feet. He's going to be the better striker. So I don't see a world where Brian Ortega wins. And Brian Ortega, even he said this in a recent interview. He said something along the lines of, like, you can't get better with every skill. Like, you got to just pick one or two that you're good at and focus on them, because you can't really get great at everything. And now he's saying he wants to go to war. I don't know, man. It's just rubbing me the wrong way. If I had to pick a lock, I would do Aljamain Sterling. But there's always a chance. The reason why I didn't have him as a lock, there's always that little chance. You know, I mean, yes, we've seen Ortega get some close submissions against high-level guys. Like we saw what he almost had on Volk. But it almost is an almost. I just don't see him doing that to Aljamain Sterling. But there always is the chance. That's why I didn't have it as a lock. But if you want to have the lock, that's what I would put as the lock. I would put it probably, if I had to only pick one, I probably would do it over Mingyang Zhang. But for the traps, if I had to pick 2 traps or any traps, I would put these 2 as traps. Now, I would put Satybaldiev versus Nurgozhay just because I don't want. I know some people are like really loading up on Satybaldiev, like, oh, like, well, he looked good on short notice and he looked good up a weight class, and Nurgozhay looked really shitty when he fought. So it's like the recency bias of like one dude looked pretty good even in a loss and one dude looked really bad in the loss, UFC debut. But it's like at the same time, don't overemphasize those recent fights. You know, I'm not completely riding off Nurgozhay because Nurgozhay actually is decently well-rounded. He could wrestle here. He could probably implement the same game plan that Martin Boudet implemented against Satybaldiev and probably win this fight on a decision that way. Now, I don't know if he's going to do that, but I put this as a trap because I feel like people are kind of just looking at the last 2 fights and then just completely writing this one off like Nurgozhay has no chance. Easy pick for Satybaldiev. I think this fight could be a lot closer than people might think it is. So I put this as a trap, but the odds are close, so it's not like a huge wide trap. The reason why if I had to put a trap, I would put Yizha versus Wilson here. This line is abysmally wide. Yizha is young. He's not super experienced in the UFC. Yes, it's like he survived. It was Gabriel Santos where he survived and went to a decision. He still lost, though. It's like if he goes to a decision against Westin Wilson, it could look interesting. He's not going to look like a minus 1,200 in a decision. So do not go and throw him in every single parlay. That's why I have this as a trap. More so like a completely avoid this. If you are betting on this fight at all, it should be on the Westin Wilson side. As crazy as you want me to call it, because I know I have him I had Yizha as a high confidence pick. Yizha will not be in a single play. Maybe like a knockout only decision sub no action prop. I might look into that, but I gotta check the odds on that because I don't even know what that's at. It's probably shot, but if you're doing Yizha money line, do not put that in any parlays. I'm telling you right now, I will not. And I highly recommend you do not do that either. That's just silly, not worth it at all. So that it is a trap. Betting wise, this is a trap, not worth the chalk at all. Now, if I had to do a little bit more, if I had to change it just a little bit more, if I just went a little bit further, you could put Mingyang Zhang as a lock. The reason why I say this, I actually changed this. I wasn't originally going to do this, but I was watching recent interviews of these guys before the fights, earlier this afternoon, and I saw Johnny Walker was saying, someone asked him, it was a great question. They were like, Mingyang Zhang, like his grappling hasn't really been tested a ton. Like, do you see yourself trying to test his grappling and like implement the grappling? And I just sat there and I was like, oh my goodness, Johnny Walker, his brother is a heel hook demon, He could try and grapple. Maybe yes, he's not great with getting takedowns, but maybe he just bum rushes and does some crazy wild Johnny Walker shit and somehow gets it to the ground. Maybe he goes for a heel hook. Maybe it's a maybe. That could happen. I know it's kind of like fairy tale la la land, but it could happen. What does Johnny Walker say? He says, hell no. He says, I'm going to stand and bang. I was like, oh brother, we're in for a treat. Johnny Walker was like, screw the grappling. He literally said, I'm going to stand and bang. Not what I wanted to hear. It made me even less confident in Johnny Walker having a chance, because Johnny Walker, it's not that he's like a horrible striker. It's just, he's basically saying, I'm down to go chin for chin. And yes, Mingyang Zhang has been knocked out before. Yes, it's happened. Yes, we all know that, but it was years ago. And he does not want to go chin for chin against Mingyang Zhang. That just seems like the dumbest game plan to have here. If he was like, yeah, I might try and test his grappling a little bit. If he even gave a hint of like, or even if he said, like, we'll have to see. We'll have to see on fight day. Just kind of not saying either way, I'd be like, okay, maybe there's a chance. He straight up said no. Like, nope, no shot. I'm just going to stand and bang. Maybe even less confident in Johnny Walker. It would be crazy to see him get the upset, but just after seeing that, it makes me even less confident. So you're putting him as a lock. I totally get it. I almost was going to, but just couldn't quite get there. And then finally, too, with Nueraji versus Crosbie, the line is so wide. I'm telling you, I could be totally wrong. Kiefer Crosbie could go out here and get submitted in the first round. I would not be surprised. If he got knocked out for the first time in, I think, it could be ever. I know he had one, like, injury knockout loss. I don't know if he's been, like, fully knocked out cold before. Yes, he had a lot of his fights at Bellator, so it's not like necessarily the same, but still, he has a decent chin. Like, he's not just getting put out. If you were to get put out here, I would not be surprised. He's being brought in here for a reason, it seems like, but at the same time, you're paying almost 5-1 minus 500 odds on a 24-year-old UFC debut on taking this fight on short notice in front of a huge crowd in his hometown where the nerves are going to be high. I'm just saying, people throwing him in a million parlay pieces. It's almost like the Yizha situation. Do I think Yizha wins? Yes. Do I think Nueraji wins? Yes. Should you be very, very careful about playing either of these if you decide to? Yes. Be very careful. These are decent traps in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, it's if the Nueraji Crosbie fight doesn't go to the ground, this line's going to be close. This line's going to be a lot closer than a minus whatever 400 or 500 that he's at right now. So just as a heads up, if I had to do it, because I know, honestly, because like I said too, I probably would. This is probably where I would have it, honestly, if I had to pick. But I know some people got upset I didn't have a lock from last week, so this is probably where I'd have it. You could put it here too. I totally get it. If I had to pick more, this is probably where I would leave it. But I just want to let you guys know, this is probably where I would have it if without any locks or traps. It's probably where I see it being the most accurate in my opinion. Just my opinions, but like I said, this is where we could be. But anyway, guys, that does it for this week's Locks and Traps video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for all the love on the recent videos, all the support. It's been totally awesome. Let me know in the comments who you guys are taking, why. If you agree with any of these, if you would disagree with any of these, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Once again, thank you guys so much for all the love on the recent videos. It's been totally awesome. If you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure to subscribe. It means a ton. It goes a long way. So thank you guys once again. It's your boy Jacob from Topside MMA. Until I see you guys in the next one, I'm out. Peace.